miserable rainy day, but welcome everybody, and I must admit it was a fantastic privilege to walk through the graduation crowd this morning. You couldn't help but smile from ear to ear because of all the excitement happening. It must be a wonderful time for you guys to see your students graduating, so congratulations to all of you for the hard work that you've done, and welcome this morning. By way of introduction, my name is Anne Street. I'm from Alexander Forbes Health. I always joke, whenever I stand and do a medical aid presentation, I'm referred to as the medical aid lady. So, if I'm doing a Discovery Health presentation, I'm known as the Discovery Health lady. But if I'm doing MedShield, I'm known as the MedShield lady. So I pretty much wear a lot of colors. So just to let you know, Alexander Forbes are your healthcare consultants. We're here to help you understand your medical aid offering for next year. We're not going to disappear. If you need help at any point in time during the course of the year, pick up the phone to us. We will have resources and staff that come to the various campuses during the course of the year, and we'll be sending out schedules just to let you know when we will be here, etc. I want you to know, when you walk out of here today, you will forget what I've been talking about. Please don't panic. In terms of our experience, it takes people about 2 years to come to terms with their new medical aid. So during those 2 years, and while you're coming to terms with it, please remember, don't panic about anything. If you get stuck, please be in touch with us. All right. The flow of the presentation today is going to be very big picture. When I say big picture, I'm not going to go into the details of saying, your benefit option for optical on this plan is the following, etc., etc. Okay? I want to give you a sense of the philosophy of each of the medical schemes, how they work, how the plans work. If you want the detail in terms of what is the benefit limit, you might have a particular condition that you're more concerned about, the schemes will be outside. You're welcome to go and talk to them about benefit limits and information on the scheme and how they work, etc. I want to give you the big picture so that you get the grasp of the philosophy of each of the schemes. All right. Choosing a medical scheme is not an easy exercise. You know what happened to your health in the past, but that's not any indication of what might be coming at you next year. So that can be quite a daunting task. I want you to know that the plan that you're choosing is the plan that will be in place for the next 12 months. At the end of next year, we will be back to talk about the value proposition and the scheme's offerings for 2019, and you have the opportunity to choose your plan all over again. So every year, you get to choose your plan because your circumstances change from time to time. It's not like Witsmed that offered one option and you had to stay on that option. Okay. So I'm going to give you some tips on how to choose your medical aid plan. So big picture of the medical aid plan, and then some tips to choose your medical aid plan. We're going to go into the products itself, just as I say big picture, so that you understand the philosophy of the plans. There may be a lot of questions. Now there are a lot of you in this room, and I've been finding, is the mic not on? Thank you for that. I've been finding that when we allow questions during the course of the presentation, we get sidetracked. And we get into debating all sorts of things, and other people are not particularly interested in that. So we're going to limit the questions, if possible, to the end of the sessions. As I say, the schemes will be outside to answer any product-related questions. If you need some help in terms of understanding maybe the option you've been defaulted to, or potentially your subsidy if you're a pensioner, you're welcome to come and have a chat to me. All right, I've mentioned who Alexander Forbes is. We're here to help you. We're also here to help your employer. We will give them industry updates. It'll help them understand whether the impacts of that legislation change has any impact to its members, to their policies, etc. We also every year do a benchmarking for your employer so that we can see whether the product offering or the basket of schemes that we've made available are still appropriate for the employee and their pensioner base. So that's an annual review that gets done. Okay. In terms of the Financial Advisors and Intermediary Services Act, I need to just let you know that in order to give advice in the healthcare space, You need to be accredited with the Financial Services Board as well as the Council for Medical Schemes. These are our accreditation details, so just to let you know that we are accredited in terms of doing this work. All right, let's look into the rationale. Why are we going through this change? So the university has an immense diverse population that it looks after. You have your youngsters who are saying, I don't want to join the medical aid scheme. It's expensive and I don't use it. You then have your older member, and unfortunately as we age, things start to wear out. To the youngsters in the room, enjoy your youth. It doesn't last. But we have this need there's a pull for more equity, greater fairness, and more choice on behalf of the employees. At the same time, if you looked at WitsMed, WitsMed was not attracting younger people. And in the medical scheme space, it's the younger, healthier people that cross-subsidize the people with more needs. I don't want to call them elder people because not all old people need a lot of medical aid, but generally the people with more healthcare needs are being cross-subsidized by the younger and less, and people with less needs. Okay. So in response, the university put together what they call a medical scheme ad hoc committee. The ad hoc committee was responsible for having a look at what do we do with WitsMed? Do we retain WitsMed and restructure it? Do we put open market schemes alongside WitsMed? Or do we amalgamate WitsMed into an open market scheme and allow the process to go forward with this amalgamation? Having considered all the pros and cons of each of these scenarios, it was concluded that the university would go for the amalgamation route. And so all of you as members of WitsMed were asked to vote on whether or not you were in favour of the amalgamation. The results of that voting was that there was an overwhelming in favour vote of the amalgamation. And so from the 1st of January, WitsMed will cease to be, and you will be amalgamated into the Discovery Health Open Market Scheme. As soon as that was announced, now, I also know that there's been an enormous amount of stress and unhappiness because of the short time frame that we have in which to make a decision. The reason this has been is that the Council for Medical Schemes only approved the amalgamation at the end of November. Because the scheme is not going to exist, we have to do something. We have to do communication to members right now. We were not in a position to do any communication before the amalgamation was approved by Council because it might have been rejected. So we apologize for this hastiness with which all things are being done. We want to say to you, you do have 3 months in which to make your call. So don't panic if you haven't made your decision by the end of the year. You will be given 3 months in which to make your decision, but you will be defaulted to an option on the Discovery Health Medical Scheme. Those are all the WitsMed members. If we have key health members in the audience, we'll talk to your process as we go through the presentation because it is different. Okay, so with this amalgamation taking place, what we're having is that the university then said, okay, we better find some schemes in the open market scheme that we would want to include in the basket of schemes. Do we just want Discovery Health or do we want greater choice than just Discovery Health? So they put together a medical aid selection committee. And the medical aid selection committee looked at the top 13 open market medical schemes. That constitutes about 95% of the open market medical aid membership. So it was an extensive review. We will talk through the products that were selected in a moment. But what they wanted to do in the selection of those schemes was to try and have as broad a range of products as possible. So, if we look at WitsMed, WitsMed is what is known as a traditional scheme. A traditional scheme says to you, you have so much to spend on GPs, you have so much to spend on specialists, you have so much to spend on glasses, dentistry, blood tests, etc., etc. It defines the limits for each of the benefit categories. Discovery Health is not a traditional scheme.
It is what is known as a new generation scheme. New generation schemes introduce medical savings accounts. So instead of having defined benefit limits, they say to you, here's a medical aid savings account. You manage it. Very different philosophy to that of the traditional plan. They're also looking at something called the network option. So network options have also been included in the mix. Network options say to you, your freedom of choice is restricted. So now we need you to make use of a defined network of GPs or a defined network of hospitals in which to get your treatment. When we channel you through different networks, the medical schemes are given the opportunity to negotiate rates with providers. And so those options are more cost-effective than options that allow you freedom of choice. So we looked at the three. We introduced all three because some people typically like traditional structures and may not want to go to a new generation option. You are going to be defaulted. If you're on VitsMed, it will be to a new generation option. I'm going to say to you today, please don't allow yourself to be defaulted. Apply your mind to what it is that you need, and if you prefer traditional, go with traditional. Okay. The medical schemes being introduced for next year are Discovery Health Medical Scheme, MedShield Medical Scheme, and Umvuzo Health Medical Scheme. Together, these three schemes have 35 options. So you are effectively moving from a one-option scheme to 35 options. That can be very daunting. Choice is lovely to have, but with it comes a certain amount of stress because if you don't understand it and you don't know how to choose your plan, that's an incredibly stressful thing. So hopefully today we'll shed some light on that and you can get to understand how these schemes work. Discovery Health Medical Scheme has the most options. There are 23 options on Discovery Health Medical Scheme. They are new generation in structure. They also have a network series, but they do not have traditional. If you're wanting to stay on a traditional structure, I would encourage you to look at MedShield or Umvuzo. MedShield offers all three of those product categories, so it would be new generation, traditional, and network. And Umvuzo does traditional and network. Okay. In our industry, like most industries, we have a lot of terminology. So if you read the material that went out, you might have been bombarded by some of this terminology. Let's look at first and foremost what is known as prescribed minimum benefits. These are the minimum sets of benefits that every medical scheme on every option has to cover. There are 270 conditions, which are largely those that take place in hospital. They are put into the Medical Schemes Act and their regulations if you are looking for them. There are 26 chronic conditions that every scheme has to cover. And every scheme has to cover medical emergencies. Now, the definition of a medical emergency in the medical scheme environment is, if you do not get to hospital, it is likely you are going to die. And if you're not going to die, you will at least lose a limb. That is defined as a medical emergency. If you happen to not feel well on a Sunday and go off to casualty, they will say to you, it's not a PMB. You might think of it as an emergency, but it's not a PMB because you're not dying and you're not going to lose a limb. The reason I talk PMBs is because medical schemes are told they have to pay PMBs at cost. Not at any medical scheme tariff, but at cost. Now that's like giving an open checkbook to a medical provider. Because if you were the last anaesthetist in town, for example, are you likely to negotiate a nice cheap rate with a medical scheme, or are you going to charge whatever you want? You're more likely to charge whatever you want. It's supply and demand. So, in order to control costs, what the schemes are allowed to do is to say to you, if you are wanting us to pay your PMB expenditure at cost, we want you to go to a network of doctors or hospitals. They call them designated service providers or DSPs. Those are the doctors that they have negotiated rates for in order to keep the costs at a more manageable expense. If you go to your own doctor for treatment on a PMB, and the doctor charges above what the medical aid rate was, negotiated rate was, they will say to you, please pay the difference between what the scheme's rate was and what your doctor charged. Okay, those are PMBs. There are 26 chronic conditions. Every medical scheme on every option covers these 26 chronic conditions. The most common chronic conditions today: high blood pressure, high cholesterol, so hypertension, hyperlipidemia, diabetes, HIV/AIDS. Those are your top chronic conditions. I'm saying to you today, you do not need to be on a comprehensive or the top plan in order to have your chronic medication covered, because every medical option has to cover these conditions. However, again, to control costs, what medical schemes can say to you is, this is our formulary. In other words, this is our list of medicines that we are prepared to pay for these particular chronic conditions. Now on VitsMed, because you're administered by Discovery, the philosophy is exactly the same. Here's a list of medicines that they cover. If your medicines are on the list, they'll pay you 100% of the cost of those medicines. But if the medicines are not on the list, they will give you a random chronic drug amount. If your medicine costs less or as much as the chronic drug amount, they'll pay for it. But if your medicine costs more than the chronic drug amount, then they're going to say to you, pay for anything that costs in excess of this chronic drug amount. That is the medicine. Waiting periods. Medical schemes are are governed by the Medical Schemes Act, and the Medical Schemes Act says that a medical scheme in the open market space cannot decline membership to anybody. So if I decide that I want to join a medical aid scheme, I can go along to the scheme. Now, medical schemes are a little bit like stokvels. We contribute to them when we're young and healthy, so that the people who are not well, that need access to benefits, can claim. Some people, by the time they reckon by the time we get to retirement years, we could be claiming as much as 4 times what we contribute. It's all about cross-subsidization. So, because the medical scheme cannot turn anybody away, and perhaps you have a member who wants to join the medical aid scheme later in life, because he's been healthy all his youth, and he hasn't felt the need to belong to a medical scheme, but he hasn't contributed to any of the reserves. Now he comes along, and perhaps he has a bad back and he needs a back operation. And let's assume that back operation is going to cost 500,000 rand. They're coming to join our medical aid scheme. The scheme cannot say you cannot join. Often what members do is they come in, they have their procedure, they take the 500,000 rand that you and I have been contributing towards, they have the procedure and they leave. So they simply have used our funds. There is nothing in the Medical Schemes Act that says I can stop them from coming in, using the funds and exiting. Medical schemes can only get cash from their members. If they exhaust their medical aid reserves, the only people they can turn to are you and I as members of the fund. It cannot go to a bank and ask for a loan. It cannot list itself on the stock exchange to raise capital. The only thing it can do is ask us as members of the fund to please pay more. So to protect the funds, for all of us that have been contributing for many years to these reserve pools in the hope that when we get older, we can get access to the benefits that we need, what medical schemes can do to limit access to the funds is to say, if you come onto the scheme later in life, we can impose waiting periods. They call it underwriting terms. A 3-month general waiting period. In other words, you will fund the medical aid contribution for 3 months, but you will get no access to benefits. If you have any pre-existing conditions, those will be excluded for a 12-month period. And if you join the medical scheme after the age of 35, they can impose a late joiner penalty. Anything from 5% to 75% of the contribution. That is to encourage people to join earlier in life so that they also form part of this cross-subsidization that takes place on medical schemes. Now, you'll be pleased to know you're not going to be underwritten. You're not going to be attracting any waiting periods or late joiner penalties. Having looked at the data, though, there are a couple of people who have late joiner penalties on potentially a mom or a dad that they added onto the WITS-Med medical scheme. That late joiner penalty will be carrying over to Discovery Health. If you have any 30-odd-year-olds that potentially maybe you've got kids or something like that that are not on a medical scheme, I'm going to say to you, tell them to get on before 35, because that penalty does not go away. Whenever you move schemes, it goes with you. Okay. The proration of benefits is another term you will hear in our space. If you join the medical scheme at the beginning of the year, you get access to the full 12 months benefits. If you join during the course of the year, the benefits are prorated for the balance of the year in which you've actually joined the scheme. I mention that because we have a 3-month window period in which you can choose a different scheme. So if you've been defaulted to Discovery and you choose to join MedShield or Mvuzo, they will only give you benefits from the month in which you are joining the scheme. Okay. We've mentioned designated service providers and we've spoken to the medicine formularies. How do you choose your medical aid plan? Let's start big picture. Do you want to try a new generation plan? What are the benefits of a new generation plan? If you're somebody who potentially doesn't use a lot of medical aid, it's always a win to have a new generation plan because the savings account is yours. If you do not use it, you do not lose it. It rolls over from year to year. It's literally like having a bank account held in your name in the medical scheme environment. If ever you leave it, or potentially after a couple of years you might decide I would prefer to go to a MedShield, because MedShield, the option, maybe you go to a traditional option, and the option doesn't offer a medical savings account, you get that money paid out to you. It is not accessed by anybody else. It is your money to handle and manage the cost of your day-to-day expenses in the medical scheme world. That's a new generation plan. Your traditional plans, if you're happy with the traditional structure, and I'm going to say if there are any single moms or single parents in the audience today, I love them if you have kids that potentially need a lot of GP visits, etc. Traditional plans are wonderful because they offer a lot of richness of benefits. If you're not wanting to manage a savings account, because you really need to manage your savings account to make sure that the medical savings that they've allocated you last for the entire year, a traditional plan sort of helps you with it because it says to you, you've got so much for GP, so much for medicines, etc., etc. So if you're more comfortable with that, have a look at traditional. And if you're looking at network, now network plans are really what we call primary plans. The primary plans are for people who have limited need for sophisticated medicine. In other words, I don't need to use a lot of specialists. I don't have fancy blood tests that are needed. I don't need orthodontics treatment or crowns or bridge work. This plan gives you access to GPs, medicines, some basic dentistry, cleaning, polishing, fillings, etc. It's really an entry level. The network plans are the one sets of plans that actually ask you what you earn because they're looking to attract people who are lower income earners and who want access to primary benefits. So that's your first decision. The most expensive costs in your medical scheme space are hospitalization. I always say, you know, when you go into hospital, they add a couple of more noughts onto the end of their bills. It's not something we do too often, touch wood, but when we go, it's an expensive thing. The biggest claim that Discovery Health had, that I'm aware of anyway, was a 16 million rand claim for a 40-year-old who had knee surgery. But he was a hemophiliac. Hemophiliacs, clotting is a problem. So it cost them 16 million rand to stabilize this man. The lowest cost option is their Kike network plan. I'm going to talk to Discovery's philosophy is that they do not limit hospitalization. There is no limit, no overall limit, like you have a 3 million rand overall limit on WITS-Med. There is no overall limit on any of the Discovery Health options, including their primary care plans of Kike. The biggest claim Kike had was 4 million rand. Also a hemophilia. So be aware that these plans have comprehensive hospitalization. It's the one thing you want to choose. It's the most appropriate hospital plan for you. Look at the level of cover that you choose when you buy your hospital plan. Doctors today can charge whatever they want. If I look in the audience, there'll be some of you that will remember the good old days when we had such a thing as a contracted in rate. Does everybody remember that term, contracted in? In about September, October each year, your medical scheme industry would sit together and they would define what they thought they could actually afford for every procedure, every consultation, and they would put it in a government gazette. It was known as the scale of benefits or the contracted in rate. If your doctor charged that rate, he was guaranteed payment from the scheme. So often you go off to a doctor and he said to you, don't worry, I'll submit the bill to the medical aid. You never saw the bill, it went to the medical aid and the medical aid paid it. You then have SAMA, the South African Medical Association. It's like the doctors' union. They would look at it and go, I've studied for 7 years, I've specialized for 7, I've worked for 27. I'm not charging that medical aid rate. So they would define their own rates. And that was known as the contracted out or SAMA rates. If you went to a doctor that charged those rates, they would say you paid cash up front and came back from your medical aid. Now, some years ago, the Competitions Commission got involved in the healthcare industry and they said it is anti-competitive for medical schemes to set tariffs and for doctors to set tariffs. So the whole tariff system has fallen away. Now every medical scheme has to negotiate its own rates with the providers out there. So when you join a Discovery Health medical scheme, you will see reference to, we will pay 100% of the Discovery Health rate. MedShield will say we'll pay 100% of the MedShield rate, and Umvuzo likewise 100% of the Umvuzo rate. There is no medical scheme rate. There is no cap on what doctors can charge. How many of you, when you go to the doctor, ask him what he earns? Just a show of hands. I mean, not what he earns, what he charges. What are you going to charge me? When you call the plumber out, what's the first thing you say? Hello, yes. It's a culture in South Africa, isn't it? We don't negotiate with doctors. We always joke and say, you know, there's God, there's the dominee, and then there's the doctor. And nobody questions one of those. Now, in hospital, if you don't ask, you could end up with a bit of a shock when you get that bill. In fact, I got a shock. I took my mum to a plastic surgeon to get some cancer removed. I think he asked 18,000 rand up front. Never in my life had I paid that kind of money to a doctor up front. Normally, you're used to getting, the doctor submits the bill, and if there's a shortfall, you pay the shortfall. Not anymore. Many doctors are obviously not getting their shortfalls, so now a lot of them are asking you to pay cash up front. There can be quite a substantial difference between what the medical scheme pays and what the doctors are charging these days. There are products on the market today known as gap products. I've come across some members in some of the other sessions have had gap products. Gap products bridge the gap between what the scheme pays and what the doctors charge while you're in hospital. Be aware that those products do exist. If you don't have one of those products, the plan that you choose is important. Different plans cover different percentages of the medical scheme rate or the negotiated rates. So you could join a scheme that covers 100% of the medical aid rate, or one that joins 200%. The top one, I think, covers 300%. Again, doctors can charge whatever they want, and some of them go up to 500%. Be aware of that. If that does happen, or if you are going to go into hospital and potentially you don't want to negotiate your rates with the doctor, you're not comfortable to do that, phone the medical scheme and say to them, I have the need for an orthopedic surgeon, I live in X, Y, and Z area, please can you tell me who the doctor is on the network so that I can visit that doctor and have the procedure done with that particular provider. Okay, because they have negotiated 100% of the cost with those doctors. Now, medical aid cover is like any other insurance that you buy. You know that if you buy your motor car insurance, they say to you, do you want an excess? And if you take some of the risk by paying an excess, we will reduce your premium. Everybody comfortable with that concept? Medical schemes do the same thing. They say to you, on certain options, we have asked for upfront payments. They call them either deductibles or co-payments. If you pay for a co-payment or a deductible, your contribution is reduced as a result. It's like saying, I'm going to take the risk, but I'm not going to have this procedure next year. So I'm prepared to go to an option that reduces its premium because it's given me a co-payment. The other thing you can do is to have a look at, do I want freedom of choice or do I want to go through a network of hospitals, because then the fees are negotiated for me. Those are the big questions to ask when you're looking at your hospital cover. The next thing to consider is your chronic medication. As I said to you, the 26 chronic conditions are covered on all plans, all the PMBs. Have a look at, if your chronic condition is not on that list, there are other plans. Mitchell have a number of plans, as do Imvuzo, that offer what they call additional chronic conditions. On Discovery Health, the only options that cover additional plans are the top options, the comprehensive and the executive plans. Make sure that your medicine is on the list to avoid any co-payments. Or, if you're not wanting to change your meds, remember that you will fund anything above the chronic drug amount. Some people, or some schemes also ask you to use designated service providers to get your particular medicine. Most of them, because what happens is your pharmacy will charge a dispensing fee. So to reduce the costs of that, they've negotiated rates with a number of providers out there. The most common being the Dis-Chem and Clexis. Okay, so if you use them, you're likely to get a discount in terms of your dispensing fees. The day-to-day cover. This is the thing you and I use all the time. On a Discovery Health or New Generation plan, it's important that you know, if you are not lying in hospital, the cost is coming out of your savings account. You need to be lying in that bed with that little white bracelet on your arm. That's the only time it's being paid for from the hospital benefit or your chronic benefits. Those benefits are known as risk benefits. Hospital and chronic are risk benefits. That's where we cross-subsidize each other because the costs are expensive. But on the day-to-day side of things, they say to us, that's a little bit more of a controllable expense. So you can get to choose. Do you self-medicate? Do you go to a GP? Do you go to a specialist? What do you do? In that space, they give you this medical savings account. How do you know if there's enough in that medical savings account to last you for the entire year? What I always do is I sit down and draw up a little bit of a budget. And I say, well, last year I went to the GP 3 times. My GP visits are about 400 Rand. So 3 times 4, I need 1,200 Rand for GPs for next year. And I go through glasses, dentists, all the sorts of things that I typically claim for until I get to a Rand value. And then I say, maybe I'm going to spend 20,000 Rand a year. I need to make sure that if I'm going for a New Generation plan, that I've got at least 20,000 Rand. If I'm going to buy a traditional plan, I'm going to say, look at each of the benefits and make sure that your limits are sufficient on the traditional structure. Now, you're going to be moving from this income-based table on WITSMED right down to the open market space goes, we ask one flat line table. They're not interested in what you earn unless you go to a network or primary entry option. They're going to say to you, I don't care what you earn, this is the flat line table. Now for some people who are in the lower income brackets on WITSMED, that's an enormous step up. Okay? So watch for that. You're going to see a big change in the contribution that you pay if you're in the lower income brackets in particular. You're going to be defaulted to an option. Discovery looked at the income bracket that you were on WITSMED. They looked at your family composition. Are you a principal member, a principal plus child, principal plus adult? And they defaulted you accordingly. I'll show you the table in a minute. They also looked at your personal utilization. So they said, if you had an additional chronic condition, if you were using oncology benefits and you exceeded 190,000 Rand for the year, or if you used the Center for Diabetes and Endocrinology, they put you onto the classic comprehensive option, or potentially on some people, a classic Delta comprehensive option. It's, in our view, a step up from the WITSMED option. So for some people, not all people, depending on where you are on the table, for some people it's a big step up. For my pensioner members, it's a big step up. So be aware of that. Your children. In the open market space, children, when they turn 21, are viewed as adult dependents. And they are billed an adult dependent rate. Discovery Health says, I don't even care if they study. They're 21, they're adults now, they're going to be billed an adult rate. Umvuzo does exactly the same thing. MedShield says to you, if your child is a student, so long as you provide proof of that student that they're studying, they will bill them a child rate up to the age of, until the date of their 28th birthday. So it's quite a nice one. So if you've got students, it's going to be more cost effective to have a look at a MedShield option than it is to look at either of the other schemes. Who's eligible to join your medical aid scheme? Witsmed was a little more generous with who they allowed to join the medical aid scheme. So you have special dependents. The open market scheme is not so generous. In the open market scheme space, they say to you, we will allow your spouse or your common law partner to join the medical aid scheme with you. And we will also allow your eligible children will be your biological children. Unless you've got a legal document that says, a court order that says you are the legal guardian of this child, or this child is an adopted child or a foster child, etc. Now, I know there are a lot of gogos out there that look after their grandkids. If that is the case, it becomes a bit of a problem if you want to add your grandchild on because they want the court paper. Having said that, if you are going to default to Discovery, whoever is on your medical scheme at this point in time, if it's your grandchild, your mom, your dad, will be transferred over to Discovery Health Medical Scheme. So it affects people who are now wanting to add dependents more than members who already have their dependents on. We've said to you there'll be no underwriting, so you don't need to worry. There'll be no late journal penalties unless you want to add a dependent, such as mom and dad or anybody else that you deem fit or that you have some sort of financial responsibility towards. Okay? So for this, you don't need to worry. You can choose any of the schemes, any of the options. There'll be no consequences in terms of waiting periods, etc. Your defaulting. We've mentioned the criteria that we used. I just want to show you the definitions there. The tables that you will have seen in the member letters that went out. The P stands for principal member. This is a single person on a medical aid scheme. They'll look at the income bracket that you are on in Witsmed, and they'll say, these are the default options. So if I was somebody earning between 2746 and 3610, for example, I'm being defaulted to KeyCare Plus. But if I was at 13655, I'm going to Classic Priority. A PA is a principal plus any number of adults, whether it's one or multiple adults, but there are no children. A PC is there are no adult dependents, but I have one or multiple children. And a PAC says I have principal plus adult dependents plus children. Those are the categories that you'll be falling into. Please be aware that the pensioner members have a different default to the active members. What they've also done is take into account your subsidy from the university, so your defaulting will be different. You'll see a lot of defaulting to Classic Priority, which is what we think is more of a fit for the average member on Witsmed. But for a number of people, Classic Comprehensive was the default. For those people, if you're unhappy because it could be quite a big step up in your personal contribution, please come and chat to us. We need to determine first and foremost if a comprehensive option is really what you need for your medical needs. We did ask Discovery if we could move the default from comprehensive for pensioner members down to priority, but because the amalgamation has been signed off by the Council for Medical Schemes, they're saying to us they cannot change the defaulting at this stage. So anybody who does want to change options will need to complete an option change form. Looking at those option change forms, they are included in the communication that went out. Your cut-off date for a 1 January start date is firstly, the first cut-off date is the 15th of December. Payroll is going on leave on about the 22nd of December. So that gives them about a week in which to process the option changes and submit them to the schemes. They will come back at the beginning of the year and will be available from, I think, the 2nd or the 3rd of the month, and will continue to submit the option changes that they receive. They have until the 5th. You have until the 5th in which to submit in January for a January start date. Likewise, with any application forms, 15th of December or the 5th of January for a 1 January start date. If you've decided you'd like to take some more time making your decision, for example, you might say, I'd like to try out a new generation option, but if it comes to February and March and I don't like it, I still have the opportunity to change my options for the year. In that case, I'm going to say to you, the cut-off date for each month is the 5th of the month in order to get it processed in that month. So just be aware of that. But you have up until the 31st of March to make your decision. My Key Health members, Key Health is not going to be included in the basket of benefits for next year. Key Health was going to impose waiting periods, late journal penalties, etc. So the university said it made no sense to include them in the basket because people would be underwritten. There would be waiting periods, which didn't make sense. So Key Health will no longer be part of the basket of benefits for next year, and Key Health members will have their memberships terminated on the 31st of December. So that always worries me because it's over New Year, and it's, you know what the roads are like at that time of the year. So we say to Key Health members, please complete an application form, whichever scheme you choose to join, but please submit it as soon as possible because you don't want to be caught in an accident on the 1st of January and not have medical scheme cover. The process is going forward. Discovery is going to issue a digital pack. Now that means they will email you a membership certificate. We anticipate that will start happening from Friday. So after Friday, probably early next week, you're going to see membership certificates being emailed to you. Please be aware it will be your default option. If you choose today to change your options, you'll be submitting your forms to that the email address that has been provided. It's medicalaid@wits.ac.za. If you submitted that, the scheme will not have seen it yet, it will not have processed it, so your digital pack will be your default option. Don't worry about it. The membership number on that pack will not change when your option changes. That is your membership number for life if you stay at Discovery. Because every year you get to change your option, so your number does not change. Your physical packs will be posted out to you. They had originally said they were going to do them in January, but they're saying they're going to still come and deliver them to the university. But if you're on leave, they will keep them and come back in January. We anticipate around the 11th of January to distribute your cards. Your HR consultants will, practitioners will have your cards. They will ask you to sign for your membership card so that you can get it. You can also download the mobile app. Whichever scheme you join, each one of them has an app. If you have a smartphone, you can download the app. Your mobile card will be on that phone, on the app, so you have access to it. Okay. As soon as the schemes have processed your option changes, they will email you an updated membership certificate. They will not issue you with a new card because the card does not have the name of the option that you selected on it. It simply has your membership number and the names of your dependents. Okay. I'm going to start looking at the schemes now. And I'm going to start with the MedShield and the Mvuzo, mainly because Discovery has a lot more information, and MedShield and Mvuzo are pretty simple to understand. So we're going to start there. If we look at MedShield, I said to you they offer all three, new generation, traditional, and network options. If we look at the new generation option, on the right-hand side of the screen, you will see MediSaver. MediSaver, if you buy the MediSaver product, we're saying to you, you're buying a hospital plan. The hospital plan for MedShield asks you to use a network of hospitals to control the costs. It covers the 26 PMDs. Your day-to-day benefits, there aren't any. You're buying a hospital plan. If you're looking for something a little bit more, now the Premium Plus option is what we would default, or not default, but align with a BIDS-Med option. Premium Plus says to you, if you're going into hospital, you can go to any hospital of your choice. It's covered up to 200% of the MedShield rate. This option offers cover for 80 chronic conditions, so it has additional chronic conditions. It's day-to-day benefits. There is a savings account. If you exhaust your savings account, they call it a self-payment gap. You will fund a certain amount of money out of your own pocket until you reach a defined limit. That limit they call a threshold. Once you've reached that threshold, they give you access to more day-to-day benefits that the medical scheme will fund. Okay. It's a capped limit. It's not an exhaustive benefit offering once you've exhausted your threshold. So it says you've got some savings, you pay from your own pocket, and then you get a limited above threshold benefit, they call it. Okay. Your traditional options, these are the common and probably more popular options on MedShield. Medicore. Anytime in the medical scheme world you hear core, you know you're buying a hospital plan. So Medicore is a hospital plan. MediValue says to you, I want a little bit of day-to-day benefit. I don't need a lot, but I just need a bit. MediValue says to you, you have 100% unlimited hospitalization through the network of hospitals. The 26 chronic conditions are covered. The day-to-day benefits are pooled into different benefit categories. So you have a day-to-day benefit category that says we'll cover specialists, GP consultations, medicines, etc. Then you will have a separate benefit for optical and another benefit for dental. So they split their benefits up into the different pools. MediPlus does exactly the same thing, except the benefit limits in those pools are higher. MediBonus will cover you at 200% while you're in hospital. There are 80 chronic conditions on the MediBonus plan, and the pools of benefits are now higher on the MediBonus plan than they would be on the MediPlus or the MediValue options. Okay. The network option on MedShield is called MediPillar. It has an overall limit in hospital. It says we'll cover 500,000 Rand per beneficiary per annum or $1 million per family. So there is a limit, an overall limit on this plan. It's a primary care plan, so again, you are channeled through a network of providers in order to get your benefits, and they will give you basic benefits. So if you have a high need for fancy glasses, dentistry, etc., then this isn't a plan for you. It's somebody who's looking for GP consultations, medicines, that sort of thing. This is the network that MedShield uses. It's any Netcare hospital, any Life Healthcare hospital, and I'm going to skip to the bottom, Mediclinic, only certain of the Mediclinic hospitals. The MedShield website is actually incredibly user-friendly. On the front page, the landing page, if you go to the very bottom of the page, it says to you, find a doctor or a partner. You click on that, and it'll go to all the partners and all the providers and networks that they utilize. So it's very easy to find your way around the MedShield website. If you don't use their designated service providers, they will ask you for co-payments. The difference pretty much between what the doctors are charging and what the network arrangements are for people. There are co-payments on their core plan, their hospital plan, in order to reduce the cost of that plan. There's also some on the MediSaver plan. And then the plans that offer additional chronic conditions. So MediPlus has a list of chronic conditions that are over and above the 26 chronic conditions. These are the conditions. The one thing with MedShield is they cover depression on all their options. Okay? Whereas on Discovery Health, depression is only covered on a comprehensive plan. So that's quite a nice benefit from MedShield. Their top options, the Premium Plus and the MediBonus option that offer the 80 conditions, these are the conditions that they cover. So if you do not have a PMB condition, please look at these additional plans because your chronic condition may well be on there. If you are going to use MedShield, and if you join the Premium Plus or the Medi Bonus option, there's a RAND limit to your chronic medication. The formulary or the list of medicines that they allow you to use up until that RAND value is a more what we call comprehensive formulary. In other words, it will cover more extensive drugs. But once you've exhausted your limit, only your PMBs will be covered, and your PMBs will then be covered at what they call the restrictive formulary, which is the formulary that all the other options utilize. Umvuzo has two traditional plans, the Supreme and the Extreme options. They're very much like MedShield, they pool benefits into different pools. They have a primary pool and then they list the types of benefits that form part of that primary pool, and a secondary pool which then has a limit and covers the rest of the day-to-day benefits. The Extreme will offer more benefit richness than the Supreme option. Both these plans offer additional chronic conditions. There are 9 additional chronic conditions on those plans. Umvuzo has a lot more network options. I personally like the standard option because there is no overall limit on the standard option, whereas the ultra affordable and the activator have 200,000 and 100,000 Rand respectively. So be aware of that. That's really first time entry. Somebody who's never been on a medical aid doesn't mind maybe using state if they have to, but the standard option is the unlimited one. They will channel you through their networks of GPs in order for you to get the benefits and remember they're going to be covering primary benefits largely. Medicines, basic dentistry, basic optometry, and access to GPs through the network. These are the additional chronic conditions that are covered on the standard plan, and then on the Supreme and the Extreme options. Okay, I'm going to go through the Discovery Health Medical Scheme now. Discovery Health offers what they call 7 series. So to the BMW drivers in the audience, you'll understand the series. There's a 1 series, a 2 series, a 3 series, or whatever. Okay? It's the same concept. On the very right-hand side is a core plan. The core plan says you're buying a hospital plan. Now, in the Discovery options, you will hear the word classic or essential quite a lot. The classic range, regardless of the series that you've bought, whether you've bought the 1 series or the 7 series, if you hear the word classic, classic says to you, while you are in hospital, your doctors will be funded up to 200% of the Discovery Health rate. Whenever you hear the word essential, your doctors are being funded up to 100% of the Discovery Health rate. You will see the next block down talks to chronic. If you go from the left all the way around, am I correct? Right. From your right all the way to the left, you will see it's 26 PMBs are covered until you get to the comprehensive and the executive series, when you will get 61 chronic conditions. So those are where you have 35 additional chronic conditions covered on those 2 series. Your core plan, if we look at day-to-day, has no day-to-day benefit. It's a hospital plan. Your smart series is aimed at your young people. Young people today are very happy to use technology. So smartphones. This is a youngster who says, I don't want to go and visit my doctor. I just want to book an appointment with him on my phone and have a video chat with him about my condition. So smartphones are all about technology. Personally, I might have a nice looking doctor and like to rather go and see him. Smart plans say to you, use the network of doctors because they have the technology platforms that we require, and also use a network of hospitals, they call them the smart network. The smart plans cost the same price as a core plan. But for young people, it's added, so you've got free visits to a GP using your phone. There are co-payments if you actually want to consult a GP, but it's 50 Rand for the essential and I think 100 Rand on the classic smart plan. The most popular plan, the Saver plan. Classic Saver, 200% in hospital. essential saver, 100% in hospital. On the day-to-day benefits, now we're starting to look at having a savings account. The classic series says to you, if you've got a savings account, in other words, not a core plan or a smart plan, but all the others, as soon as you hear the word classic, they're putting 25% of your contribution every month into a savings account. Remember I said that's your money. You take it with you if you leave the scheme. You budget accordingly. An essential series will give you 15% of your total contribution in a savings account. So you have less on an essential plan than you do on a classic plan. The priority series. Oh, before we get there, I just want to say, a saver series says to you, once you've exhausted your savings account, you're on your own. So, typically my saver plan lasts me until about March because I go off and buy glasses. But luckily enough, I'm not somebody who needs a lot of treatment or cover, so I'm happy with the saver plan. But you might be somebody that says, the savings account that they've put into a saver plan is insufficient for my needs. So the next step up would be a classic priority plan. The classic priority plan says, well, not the classic, you get classic and essential. So if I've chosen classic, I'm buying 200% in hospital, 25% for a savings account. Essential, I'm buying 100% and 15% into a savings account. The priority plan says to you, if you exhaust your savings account, you will fund a certain amount out of your own pocket, reach this thing we call the threshold. I often like to think of the threshold as an excess. So if my threshold, for example, is 12,000 Rand, I like to think of that as an excess. I have to fund the first 12,000 Rand before the scheme or my insurance kicks in and starts to fund my day-to-day expenses. Not my hospital and chronic, my day-to-day expenses. How do I fund my excess? My savings account has 10,000 Rand in it. So my first 10,000 Rand is funded from my savings account. If I exhaust that, I'll have to fund 2,000 Rand out of my own pocket before the insurance kicks in. Is everybody comfortable with that concept? The priority plan says again, I'm not going to give you unlimited benefits from the risk benefit. I'm going to potentially give you another 8,000 Rand. So you get another 8,000 Rand if you reach that threshold limit. What it does do is it also says to you, while you are in hospital, we are going to put co-payments on a defined list of procedures. So in essence, if I was moving from a saver plan, it's taking away some of my hospital benefits and it's giving it to me in the form of an above threshold benefit. It's taking from Peter to pay Paul. That's how it's balanced, that plan. The comprehensive series says, either I don't want that co-payment, or I know that I'm going to exhaust the limit on that above threshold benefit, the risk benefits that the scheme is paying for my day-to-day claims. I would like richer benefits in terms of that above threshold benefit. So this plan says to you, you have a savings account. Now let's say my savings account is 12,000 Rand. I have a gap of 6,000 Rand. That gets me to 18,000 Rand. That's my threshold. Once I've reached the threshold, I have an unlimited above threshold benefit. So I can go and see the GP, the specialist, have as many blood tests, etc. that I need. I say unlimited. There are limits on any of the threshold plans, so that's executive, comprehensive, or priority, on certain benefits. Glasses. I could spend an absolute fortune on glasses. And you know, most opticians see an optical limit as a target rather than as a benefit limit. Okay? I've never had glasses come in with any kind of limit. Glasses you can spend a fortune on. You are going to get an opportunity to spend money from the risk benefits, which is where we share each other's money. So the scheme has a responsibility to look after the money of all of us as members. So it'll limit any exposure to abuse. So it'll put a limit on glasses. It puts limits on dentistry. It puts limits on medicines, allied therapies, so occupational therapies, physiotherapies, psychotherapies, etc. That used to be an unlimited benefit until a few years ago One family used in excess of R1 million for physiotherapy. That's your and my money. And it wasn't out of medical need. It was purely overuse and abuse of the system. Hence the introduction of a limit on physiotherapy. So just watch out for that. The limits on a priority plan will be less than a comprehensive, and the comprehensive will be less than the executive plan. Executive, I don't know too many people on the executive plan. It's really expensive. It covers 300% while you're in hospital. It also covers the 61 chronic conditions. And it also has 25% going into your savings account. Your doctors, once you get into that above threshold benefit, are also funded up to 3 times the medical aid tariff for day-to-day procedures if they are on the network of specialists that Discovery uses. It's an expensive plan. You then get the Key Care series. This is the network or entry-level series. Again, very right-hand side is the core plan, a hospital plan. They're channeling you through what they call the Key Care network of hospitals, so it is reduced. They will ask you what you earn, because it is targeted at lower income earners. Key Care Access, I'm not mad about this plan, I shouldn't say that because we've been filmed, but the Key Care Access plan is for those people who say, I'm happy to use state hospitals. What I really need is access to GPs, medicines, basic day-to-day benefits. So Key Care Access does that. It says you have state facilities unless it's in a medical emergency, a trauma event, or you are going to have a baby. So in large, it's a state facility for hospitalization, but it gives you access to primary care benefits. Key Care Plus is the more popular plan in this series. Key Care Plus says go through the network of hospitals. There is no limit in terms of the hospital benefits. You need to use, for day-to-day benefits, you need to use the network of GPs, the network of specialists. I'm going to say specialists. There's a rand limit on these plans for specialist visits. It's not very high, so it's not really for the member who has a lot of need for specialist visits. It's a primary care plan. All those plans will cover the 27, they call it 27, it's 26 PMVs plus HIV. The priority plan, for those of you that are looking at it, as I said, the priority plan is more sort of the benefit richness of Witsmed. So a lot of people may be defaulted to this plan. They will ask you for 3,050 Rand upfront if you are going into hospital for what they call conservative back and neck treatment. So that's things like traction, grommets for kids' ears, tonsillectomies or adonectomies. Any of the scopes, colonoscopes, sigmoidoscopies, spectroscopies, gastroscopies, cystoscopies, 3,900 Rand. If you're going to go for arthroscope, functional nasal procedures, a hysterectomy, except if it's been preoperatively diagnosed as cancerous, and then all the gold scopes, laparoscopes, hysteroscopes, endometrial ablations, 7,300 Rand. Reflux surgery, this is the big one. Reflux surgery, spinal surgery. Now we're talking major back surgery, fusions, discs being replaced, etc. Or joint replacements. There is an upfront payment of 15,000 Rand. It's a lot of money. None of these procedures are emergency procedures, generally. They're things that can be planned. So I often say to members, if you're worried about maybe back surgery or a joint replacement, for example, that you think might be coming, but you don't think you're going to have it next year, then I'm going to say, it's fine, choose this plan for this year and something else for next year, because you can plan it. Another, if I looked at I was looking at members during this week that we were consulting to, a member plus spouse has about a contribution increase of around 3,700 Rand a month if they don't want to join priority and want to go up to comprehensive plan. That amounts to 45,000 Rand a year. So often I say to members, if you're happy to pay, in worst case scenario, the 15,000 Rand, you could still save an effective 30,000 Rand in the way of your premium if you choose the classic priority plan. So it's about, if you're not comfortable with these co-payments, look at what it costs to upgrade and determine whether it's cheaper to pay the co-payment or whether you want to do the upgrade. These are the additional 35 conditions that Discovery cover on a comprehensive or an executive plan. There you'll see major depression. I want to take you through threshold plans. I want you to understand how to use your medical savings account if you're on a threshold plan. It's very, very simple if you're on a saver plan. Here's your lump sum. Manage it for the rest of the year. Blow it, you're on your own. If you are ever going to get into an above threshold benefit, such as a comprehensive priority or an executive plan, this is something I want you to know. How do they draw down from your savings account, and how do they accumulate or add up your claims so that they know when you get to the threshold? Discovery says to you, it's your money in this medical savings account. You tell us how you want us to pay your claims. I said to you, there's no such thing as a medical aid rate. Doctors can charge whatever they want. But Discovery has negotiated their own rates. Add up your claims. They will only ever add your claims up at their rate, at the Discovery Health rate. Why? Because if I added it up at cost, if I went and saw a doctor who charged an arm and a leg, I'm going to get to that above threshold benefit a lot faster than somebody who goes to a doctor who charges the medical aid rate, because they're drawing down at that rate and they're adding it up at that rate. So all the adding up will take place at the medical aid rate. This is for a single person who's joining Classic Comprehensive. The savings account is $14,640 for the year. The threshold or excess is 16,790 Rand. So I have a gap, a shortfall of 2,150 Rand that I'm going to have to fund out of my own pocket if I exhaust my savings account. This person comes along and says to you, it's my money in the savings account. I want the scheme to refund me my claims at cost. So whatever the doctor charged, refund me at cost. He goes off to a doctor. The doctor is in the network of doctors that Discovery used. Negotiated rate, 400 Rand. They add up the negotiated rate of 400 Rand. He goes off and he buys some medicine, or the doctor prescribes him some medicine. Discovery says to you, we have a medicine list, even for acute medication. If your medicine is on that list, we will pay 100% of the cost, and we will add up 100% of the cost. But if the medicine is not on the list, we will pay for it from your savings account if you have money, but only accumulate 75%. So there is a 25% co-payment on medicines that are not on the list. In the good old days, you used to get generic and ethical medication. Sorry, this thing is just stabbing me here. You used to get ethical and generic medication. You still get that. Generic medication used to be cheaper than ethical medication. Today, some generic medication is more expensive than ethical medication. So there is not a distinction to say, I'll take a generic. It has to be a medicine on the list. The easiest way to find out if that medicine is on the list is to ask the pharmacist. When you claim it, they have access to the Discovery list. He goes off to see a Premier Rate specialist. It's a specialist on their network. They've negotiated rates with the specialist. They'll draw down at this rate, and they will accumulate at the same rate. He goes for x-rays, not a problem. It's at the medical scheme rate. He goes and he buys his glasses. They refund him the 9,000 Rand from his medical savings account for his glasses, but the limit for optical benefits is 5,000 Rand. So they're only going to add up 5,000 Rand. Watch for over-the-counter medicines. Over-the-counter medicines are Schedule 0, 1 or 2 medications. You know that you need a doctor's script if you're getting a course of antibiotics. It's either a Schedule 3 or higher medicine. If you look at the medicine bottle or the box that your medicine is in, you will find an S and a number on it. That denotes the schedule of the drug. You can buy an over-the-counter out of your own pocket. Discovery says to you, even if your doctor prescribed it, if you went to a doctor for coughs and colds and flu, they'd prescribe some some Sinutabs, some cough mixtures, etc. You didn't need a script for that. Discovery says to you, we'll pay for it, you've got money in your savings account, we're adding up 0. He then goes off, spends his last bit of money in a non-Premier Rate specialist, in other words, a doctor that's not on the network. Doctor charged 800, they will accumulate the 620, which is the rate. He's exhausted his savings account. He spent 14,640 Rand, but when you add it up in cost, it only totals 9,020 Rand. So he's got a long way to go before he gets to his threshold of 16,790. In fact, his gap now has amounted to 7,770 Rand. So in order not to make your gap grow, we say to you, if you're at the pharmacy, ask for the medicines on the list so that you don't pay the 25% co-payment. You don't claim over-the-counter medicines, Schedule 0, 1 or 2 medicines. And you say to Discovery, reimburse my claims at the medical aid tariff, because then you're drawing down at the same rate that they're adding up. Now the default is going to be the tariff. So it'll be somebody who on an exceptions basis says, I'm quite happy to have it at cost and to be the 7,000 Rand gap potentially. Okay. Once you've exhausted your gap, that's when the above threshold benefit kicks in. Now, while you are in that gap, you have to continue to submit your claims. Lots of people forget and they get irate because they say to me, I bought an expensive plan. I wanted full cover. And now the scheme is rejecting my claims. It will do that once you've exhausted your savings account. It will say to you, we reject this claim, you have insufficient funds, we're not paying for it. But remember, they're still adding it up. So in that gap, allow them to reject your claims. Don't stop submitting it, because if you stop submitting, they'll never know when you get to your threshold and when the scheme will start to fund your day-to-day benefits. Okay. The app. I said you download the app if you've got a smartphone, because you'll get your mobile card on there. There's an enormous amount of information on their app. You can take a picture of your claim and submit it using the app. You can track your claims using the app. You can book a hospital authorization on your app. There is also a new program. Has anybody in the room got Vitality? A couple of you. I'm sure you've downloaded the app. You may well have seen the Doctor Connect. Most of us, when we look for information on anything medical, go to Dr. Google. They tell us Google gets it right 35% of the time. So they don't want you going to Dr. Google. They have specially contracted with an organization that has 105,000 doctors' contributions on health-related issues. So go there when you're looking for information rather than using Dr. Google. I'm not doing a presentation on Vitality. It's another 70 slides. Okay? Vitality, so that you know it, is not Discovery Health Medical Scheme. It is not the scheme. It's a separate benefit. People in the room have bought Vitality either because they've got life policies, car insurance policies, etc. It's not Discovery Health. But Vitality is used by Discovery Health Medical Scheme. It's a separate contribution. It's voluntary. You don't have to belong to Vitality. The reason that the scheme encourages the use of Vitality is Vitality members claim 40% less than people who don't. When I say Vitality members, the people that engage with Vitality. I'm going to say to you, don't buy Vitality unless you use it. It's expensive. Personally, I'd rather you put that money towards a gap cover than Vitality if you're not going to use it. Okay. The concept behind Vitality. If all of us are claiming 40% less, in which direction are our contributions going to be going next year? That way, instead of that way. So that's why the scheme is using Vitality. It says to us, unfortunately, it's a program that uses the concept of behavioral economics. Unfortunately, most of us don't look after our bodies. And mostly we think we're invincible until one day it stops. Okay? And I actually remember going to a Vitality summit once that said, this is your home on this planet. Do you spend as much time looking after this home as you do your bricks and mortar home? You can't replace this one. So it kind of sort of hit me quite hard that day to say, okay, this is your home on this planet. Okay? Let's see if we can look after it. Vitality uses gamification in order to encourage you as a carrot approach to try and look after your health. You start off with your preventative screening benefits. So I don't know how many of you use your screening benefits. It's paid for by the medical scheme risk benefits. Please check your blood sugar levels, your high cholesterol test, do your liver test, do your body mass index tests, etc., etc. My husband picked up cancer this last year on one of those screening tests. Please use the benefit. They want to catch it as early as possible, because the concept is as soon as you know what's wrong with you, you will probably do something about it. If you do something about it, you're going to save the scheme money. Rather than you having a heart attack, you could end up on some chronic medication to prevent the heart attack, and it doesn't cost the scheme a lot of money while you're going into hospital. That's the concept. If we can get everybody to do that, then we can prevent some of the expenditure down the line. Get active. Once you know your particular health matters, do something about them. Whether you join a gym, do a park run, get one of the tracking devices and walk yourself around the block. It's your choice what you do. They give you points for every time you engage in looking after your health. And you go through different statuses. So blue all the way up through to gold. If you're on gold for 3 or more years, you get to something called diamond status. And the higher the status, the higher the rewards that they give you. So I've been on diamond status for a few years now, and I work really hard to get to diamond status every year because it gives me a 50% discount on my flights, my international flights, and I managed to get onto a holiday because of it. So I do it. It's very sad. They have to actually encourage me to get off of a couch on a Saturday afternoon because I won't do it of my own accord. So this kind of helps me. I'm also not somebody that kills myself on a treadmill. I listen to my husband pounding on that treadmill and I go, that can't be good for your knees, okay? So I walk. So all I'm saying to you is, you don't have to kill yourself, but try something. A couple of weeks ago, Carte Blanche had an exposition on some goggles in Diepsloot that had joined the gym, and they were doing boxing. And a number of them were saying that their chronics were actually coming down, their need for chronic medication, etc. And it was amazing to watch these women actually getting active and taking people on. It was phenomenal to actually watch. So you're never too old to actually start doing something. That and the shell of a nut is your medical aid offering for next year. If you need any help, please come and have a chat to me. The schemes are outside. They're there to answer any product-related questions. Remember, please submit your option change forms. If you're not going to be defaulting, if you don't want to default to the option that you've been defaulted to, please change your option. Submit all plans before the 31st of March at the very latest, but preferably 15th of December if possible. Thank you for your time today. And have a lovely festive season and a healthy 2018.